I consider myself a Chicago architect. I've had all my experience in Chicago. If you're a Chicago architect and you're going to have projects that are rehab projects that work with old structures, that's going to be a good bulk of your work.
We bought the house about 10 years ago, and the people who had lived here were the second owners. They had lived here for about 45 years. The house was functionally perfect, but aesthetically, it was probably dated back to the 1970s. The architect to us was probably the most important piece of the puzzle. We knew we wanted to do the project. We had some ideas for contractors. We had some ideas for designs. We knew that we wanted a strong architect who was creative and collaborative. So we spent a lot of time searching online and going through a lot of people's websites and portfolios. And when we found Don's website and looked through his photos and his other projects, it just seemed like a fit.
What we really loved about him was he specializes in the 2-flat to single-family conversion. And it's a unique challenge because new construction, you're starting from scratch, you have very few restrictions. Here, we wanted to retain this great brick structure we had, but we really wanted to make it a completely new place. I think that the big thing that the house didn't do was take advantage of the river. We had this view, and you'd walk into every room and it felt small and compact and kind of dark. And from our very first meeting with Don, we said our main goal is to open up the space, let the light in, and take advantage of our connection to the outside. But we also really felt like when we went into a house that we would love, we always found one focal point or a few focal points. And so we talked with Don about finding very unique things we could do in the house. And one of those, and one of my favorite parts of our house, is our staircase. So we had seen Don's work in another house, and he does beautiful staircases. And what we did was we then added another layer to that where we got old boxcar flooring from old trains and had that refinished, and it's awesome. It's such a unique fingerprint that we can put on the house that really feels like ours, and it's also a sustainable material.
In Zach and Carrie's case, they wanted to incorporate a lot of green infrastructure into the project. I find that when a client comes with specific needs like that, it adds to the quality of the project. Not only for the design, but it puts a little bit of their stamp on the project, and it makes the project more suitable for them. Given that the fact the river was going to be the main thing, I thought that it took a more contemporary approach where we really opened up the side to take more advantage of the river. So I basically expanded the masonry openings, made them larger, taller, and wider. Also provided large expanse of sliding doors that face the river as well. We made a few more openings in that sidewall. So there's a kind of repetition of windows that go consistently from the front to the back now. I love the fact in Zach and Carrie's house that you can be standing in their kitchen, and throughout the day, you'll get light from every direction. You'll get it from the east, the west, from every coordinate, and above. And throughout the day, that room changes based on the way where the light is coming from. Zach's goal and Carrie's goal was to build a green home as well. So part of those green features fit into sort of the design aesthetic they were looking for and what they found in my work. And even one of the spaces that they liked from a previous project, they thought, oh, this would be a great space for a vegetative wall. So they kind of retrofitted or put in an object that they saw that would work well from a previous design.
When Don laid out the foyer, the entryway for the house, it just seemed like it was asking for a big piece, a big sort of statement when you walked in. And so we worked with Don to figure out how we could introduce the living wall to the space. And so when you walk in, you're immediately hit with this 25-foot by 4-foot living wall.
I think it's really wonderful because Don was very open to all ideas like that. Anything that was kind of a new or fun idea that we were sort of thinking, could we try this? He was so open to all ideas, and he would then also add his touch or his unique take on it to even improve, an original kernel of an idea. And I love that because I know that we've had some friends who've worked with architects before, and sometimes they're not as open to it. They really want it to be their vision. And what I loved about working with Don was he was very collaborative and creative. And if ever we ran into a challenge about how to make something really work to the way that we were happy with it, he always pushed through to find the solution. He never stopped.
One of the aspects of the house that I'm most happy about is the wraparound deck. The original house, or when they were living in a two-flat, it had a deck that kind of came off the back of the house partially, and then it jutted out perpendicular to the house. Over time, I thought it was a missed opportunity. I had this conversation with Zach on site and just said offhanded, I said, it'd be great if you change this deck someday just to have it come out off the side here at the angle of the river. So with that thought, 2 days later, I get a phone call from them, and they're like, we love the idea of the deck, angling with the river. So we incorporate that into the project. So we have a wraparound deck that it angles with the river on one side, then it makes that connection with the river, and then it comes back around from the back of the house, and they resolve themselves in this cascading steps down to the river.
I really enjoyed every one of our meetings with Don because he is so easygoing and great to get along with. And we laughed in our meetings. We would joke around. It was really fun. Doing a home project can be stressful and difficult and demanding, but I really felt Don shielded us from that in a lot of ways.
The other thing that Don did well was that Don really owned all the projects. He seemed to come at it from the perspective almost as an owner. He had an investment in the project. He really cared about the outcome of the construction. When there were challenges, he'd be calling and following up to make sure that those issues were resolved. It really felt like he was vested. It wasn't like he had done the drawings and thrown them over the fence to us and said, now go build it. He was really involved with the long haul. And that was, I think, reflective in the final outcome.
Over the course of a project, there's many of these decisions and choices, and I'm very passionate about getting into that level of detail and working with the client to come up with solutions that I think is appropriate, not only for the client, but appropriate for that building as well, because that building, it's going to have a character to it, hopefully, in the end. And I'm committed to kind of making that a beautiful building, with my client.